let's start by introducing you, please.
Okay, my name is Henry Chao. I'm an architect from New York, United States. I have over 35 years experience in designing hospital, healthcare facilities, even higher education, university like that. But it's related to science and the medical education in quite a few places all over the United States. In UK, continent Europe, Middle East, countries like Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, and Asian countries like Korea and Singapore.
Interesting. Yeah. I heard you speak earlier, and I understood from your talk that the message that you're trying to convey is that it's getting more and more expensive to build hospitals in general, and it's getting more expensive to host one person in a hospital. The room has become more expensive. So when you say the number of beds in any hospital, perhaps 1,000 beds in a hospital used to cost X. Now it's costing the same number of beds is costing like X times, perhaps 2 or more, right? And for that, you spoke about this, and you spoke about a solution. And before we get to the solution, I'll let you speak a little bit more about this cost and what you know about it, since you've been to you've managed so many constructions, or perhaps advised so many constructions. If you can tell us more about this cost and where it comes from, what is the most expensive part of this building, and then we can talk about the solution that you proposed.
Okay, certainly. Hospital has become very, very expensive to build. Part of the reason why that happens twofold. One is the hospital is getting bigger and bigger these days. When I started my career, when I designed a hospital, the average, if somebody asks me how big a hospital is, they say a 200-bed hospital, I will use a matrix of like maybe 100 meters or 100 square meters or 120 square meters per bed, right? And so 200 bed, that will make it like 20,000 to 24,000 square meters building. These days, especially for university hospital, the matrix has become 200 meters to 250 meters per bed. So it's almost double. It's almost double.
Wow.
So easily a university hospital is bigger. And then the part of the reason why it gets bigger, because it needs a bigger space to accommodate medical technology. But the biggest change in the past 20 years is that the hospital operator have realized that when you put 2 patients together in one room or more patients in one room, there's tend to be contaminations, infections. So the hospital design had changed from a multiple patient in a room to a single patient room. And that is a big change. But that's not alone. A surgical suite had grown about twice as much. And when I started, it's like 24 square meters per suite. Right now, easily it's 40 square meters.
What's the reason?
Medical equipment.
Okay.
Right.
It's gotten bigger, or do you need more? It's more medical equipment.
Well, the bigger is the patient's still the same size.
Yes, exactly.
But you have more equipments in there. You have more monitoring equipments in there. You have more diagnostic equipment in there. Some of the surgical suites like become 100 square meter per room because they're putting X-ray machine in there. Right? So that gets bigger. It also, because of that, you also get a bigger team. So there are more people in there. So there are more people, more equipment, the room gets bigger.
Therefore, you need more space.
There's space. So combine these two and adding many other technology advancement. And then there's also a little bit of market competition. So if one hospital says, I build a brand new hospital, it's all single room, there's no 2-person share room, and I have this technology, well, guess what? The next hospital want to do the same. right? And the next hospital want to do the same.
Yeah.
So if there's a market competition, I will call changing from a patient perspective into overall a consumer perspective, the angle. This started more or less from the United States. So Americans is the one to be blamed here. That's right. And then so the hospital get bigger. And the American hospital design, I would say, in most part, is ahead of many other countries. So when the American standard changes, gets bigger, and the rest of the world follows. And then so there has been that way.
Right. I also noticed that just in Morocco, in my the little space, when I wanted to have my kids, it was about, oh, what room are you going to get for the 3 days of the hospital. And we had to visit the clinic and see the room, and then see if it's big enough to host perhaps visitors and host a family. And in my head, the back of my mind, I was like, maybe this is a little too much for for giving birth. I just need to normally I would just need to give birth in good conditions, and then the rest shouldn't matter. But then, like you said, it matters now that the patient is not only a patient today, is a consumer, and he needs more comfort than just the surgery or the care, the medical care.
And this is actually very interesting. You mentioned about the birthing room. I have to say, the evolution from a small room to the bigger room started at the room the women give birth. And about 25 years ago, the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, they start putting, before that, the birthing room just a hospital room. Hospital room looked very sterile, white wall, green wall, not much going on. They built,
boring.
Yeah, that boring, yeah. And they built a birthing room with wood panel, very floral patterns, try to make women more comfortable. And it was a huge success for Brigham Women's Hospital.
Wow.
Well, guess what? When one summer successful, everybody learned. And when the birthing room getting better, right? And then it's not just labor delivery, LDRP, and then also postpartum. So because after you have baby, you stayed in there as well.
Yes.
So then the rest of the hospital and say, why is that room that's so nice and then the other room looks so plain? And so it literally revolutionized hospital patient room design because women giving birth in a much nicer environment. Yeah.
See, women can change the world.
They sure can. In healthcare for sure.
Well, that's good. It's good that we mentioned this story.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it changed pretty much the whole hospital industry.
Yeah, it changes from a curing diseases to healing and recovery. And then one of my former clients, Cleveland Clinic, they coined the phrase called healing hospitality. So hospitality is right after healing, and it is equally important.
Right.
Yeah.
You also mentioned during your speech that you noticed that people are aging more. Like the aging population is going to be bigger and bigger in different countries of the world. You mentioned that it will be perhaps 5 times bigger in the Middle East, in the UAE.
Yes.
Perhaps 1.9 bigger in Morocco.
In Morocco, yes.
See, I followed.
Thank you.
And it's interesting because, and you also mentioned that even the people who would be caring for older people, they're themselves old because the given birth time has changed. Earlier, women would give birth at the age of 15 to 20. Now we give birth at the age of 28, 34, etc. And so things have changed, and perhaps we won't have enough capacity in our hospitals to host to host these people, and you came up with a solution that I'll let you present.
Right. So, and I think there are I think that the best way to look at in a place like Morocco is not to repeat what I consider a sort of kind of the natural evolution of healthcare development that had happened in places like U.S. and U.K. and other places, and because in those countries we didn't have the benefit of seeing what happened to the other country, right? So the hospital was for everything, right? So that's why we built that, and the hospital is for the sick care. It's also for the health maintenance, and then so everything gets bigger, and then when it gets bigger, and hospital, like I said earlier, it's very expensive to build, also very expensive to maintain.
Exactly.
Right? And then the people in the hospital are highly trained professionals,
Right.
which means they also earn a lot of money in a high salary, so it's very expensive to operate.
Right.
So you have a facility that's expensive to build, expensive to maintain, and expensive to operate. If only what you're going over there is, yeah, I have a little headache, I need a pill, and the hospital should not be the place you go to, because that costs a lot of money. And that not only costs you a lot of money, that costs the hospital a lot of money, and that eventually this money has to be paid, provided by someone. So eventually the everyday people, the customers, will end up paying the bill. So the best way to address this is we need to have a system that providing the right level of care in the right level of environment. So what is the right level? Let's say that that typically in the United States already happened. Again, United States, because they already made a mistake that everything's hospital done, so they actually changed the way how they do things. So there's a hospital right around the hospital, outside the hospital, and they have something called the ambulatory care center, outpatient center, right? So, for example, giving birth, right? Is that a hospital function, or it's not a hospital function? I want to go back to this issue because even having a lot of good hospital is not necessary even for the patient's health, right? So first, so you want to do is say, if I have a hospital, then you do the most severe disease treatments in a hospital, but less severe, if that can be outpatient, that can be a clinic you treat over there, is even lesser. So we need to develop a good, solid home care system. So using telemedicine, we talk about smart technology, and then using remote medicine, using smart treatment monitoring devices. So some of the disease can be taken care of without ever stepping into the hospital. I want to go back to the hospital one that was in a women giving birth. There was actually a study made that for women giving birth, the rate of C-section, cesarean section, is 30% higher in hospital when they're giving birth in hospital than not in hospital.
Right.
The reason why is because in hospital they can't. Because they can do it. So if there's any little difficulties, they default to something they can do, have a C-section.
Right.
I would say if women know there's always other options, the C-section is probably not a preferred choice.
Of
right?
course.
So in a way, so that's the reason why I think the hospital need to be set up to do just what's necessary and what's right. They should deal with most complicated cases, deal with sophisticated cases, and then when the safety and security is the utmost concern.
Right.
Any other healthcare need to be taken care of in the different places. And then the next one, also looking at the hospital to also reduce it, is that hospital has two types of spaces. When I mentioned earlier about 200 beds, right? So this is another thing. So my father-in-law was a physician, and he was also the president of a large hospital in Taiwan, right? So he taught me this. He said, hospital is like hotel. So why he said that? Say, once you build a 200-bed or 400-bed hospital, your operation priority changes. If you're the president of the hospital, you make money to make sure there's that many patients coming to the hospital.
Every day.
That's right. So if you're a 200-bed hospital, a typical, they call the census, you need 85% occupancy for the hospital to operate way evenly, to maintain the operation. 85%. So in a way, so if you have a hospital, you want a lot of patients coming into your hospital. Whether that's right or wrong for the patient, it may not be the case, right? So once the hospital is built, it changes your business priority. So that's a very, very interesting thing that a lot of people are not aware of that. Because now you build a space, it's like a hotel. If I ever build a 200 key hotels, I want the hotel to be occupied. So it's a hospital.
Interesting. And that's why thinking about having a home that is that has perhaps necessary care system or hospital bed connected to a hospital, something like this would be actually a great solution for the city in general.
It actually, yeah, and this is actually interesting. I have a concept I've been developing. It's called hospital care able home.
Yes.
Right. So there's a couple of things that you, as architects, so that you need to do something to sell the home that are able to deal with hospital level, able to provide in a setting that to accommodating hospital level care. It was kind of interesting. I think maybe a couple of years ago, New York City, where I'm from, they actually together with a American Hospital Association, they did a research.
Okay.
The research is New York City is obviously a lot of people, well, huge, and it's very crowded, and the hospital is always crowded.
Yeah.
So they did a study, I think with Mount Sinai Hospital and maybe other hospital, and what they did is that after patient has surgery, right, instead of keeping the patient in the hospital for recovery, they send the patient home.
Okay.
They send the patient home, obviously, and the nurses do the follow-up, and they do the other things, and they make sure the patient is properly taken care of.
How do they do that? Physically or remotely?
Yeah, both.
Both,
right? And so after they did a study, it was a small data group, but they did a study. They found, this is very interesting, they call the readmission rate. So after you hospital discharge you because something go wrong, they have to go back to the hospital. It's called readmission.
Readmission, of course.
Right? So readmission rate
has gone down.
Has gone down.
Wow.
Right, and even more important, that the mortality rate that people die afterward has gone down like 15%.
Wow.
That's one in every 7 people.
Yeah.
And so so the data is small, but data was very persuasive. So right now, large hospital like these are famous hospitals like Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic. They all start looking into the home care.
Wow.
And treatment. And then, but to do that, like right now, Morocco is rising. So you have rising population. You are building a lot of new buildings.
Right.
You're a lot of residential buildings. And one of the things, the place like Morocco, if you want to think about this, is that you need to make sure your consultants and then your developers thinking about that the home that you build, at least one room is able to accommodating a hospital level care.
What does it take for that?
It takes a few things. It takes that you want to make sure. This is amazing. The most actually important things. You need 2 doors: the door that enter into your building, the house, and the door that enter into the room.
Okay.
It's wide enough so you can put a hospital bed, move through it. And so that's a lot of time you don't think about the door is most important. The door is most important. And then and a second thing is that hospital bed is typically is not as big as the normal bed, but it's a little bit longer. You want to make sure there's a sufficient space around the bed, so if doctors coming to see you, they can get to you easily.
That's right.
They get you easily. You want to make sure that the room is reasonably adequately wired, so you can do telemedicine with your doctors and physicians and things like that. There's one item that few people consider, that you should consider, is that at some point, if the patient stay at home, that they might require 24/7 caregivers to be right next to them. Right? That's a family member, you hire somebody or something there. And
you need space for that person.
You need a space in that room for that person. And it could be just a very simple day bed or something in there, but you need a place to put it, right? So once you start doing that, now you set it up. Each room, each house is hospital care able. And then so in that case, you don't have to always visit hospital. To a great degree, hospital is also not the safest place.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And then there's a terminology called HAI. It's called hospital-acquired infection.
You get to the hospital and you inquire
in hospital. In hospital, right?
Of course, yes. It happened. We hear about this a lot.
That's right.
It happened to many of my friends, and I hear about it way too much.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in that sense, that hospital is not always the safest place.
Right.
So the hospital should be your last resort for certain specific purpose. That is the best way. And then what you need to do is to set up the hospital of adequate size, not very big, but size big enough to allow the physicians and nurses, let's say, anywhere from 150 beds to 300 to 400 beds, that they actually see sufficient number of cases. Just like everything we do, doctors also need practice. Right? So they practice through seeing patients, and nurses practice through seeing patients. They see a number of patients, they practice their craft. So that will allow them to have a good skill when the situation comes.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I hope a lot of people hear what you got to say. And that's the reason why I asked to have this chat with you. And I will certainly talk about this when I meet my friends from the real estate sector.
Great.
I'll talk about this. And I'm glad I got to hear it from you. I'm glad that there is research going on towards this, that people are thinking about these kinds of solutions. And I'm sure it's going to happen one day or another.
Yeah. Well, thank you for
Many
this
cities.
opportunity. That I love this place. It's my first time visit, and I see that the place is wonderful. People are wonderful.
Great.
And I think that I see that the little glimpse of the place is feel like the country is rising up. So. There's a lot of mistakes that, the other country made, and you guys don't have to repeat. So,
I'm glad. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your témoignage.
Thank you.
Thank you.